10 years ago, I moved across the country to start fresh. I figured 4 time zones and 5,400 kilometers would be plenty to get away from my parents and start brand new at university. Now, I didn't choose to go to a big, flashy school like UBC, U of T, or McGill. I wanted something different, something intimate, something where everyone mattered. So, in September 2015, I stepped foot on Acadia University's campus. And what followed were the best 4 years of my life. I realized very quickly that Nova Scotia was the place for me. I fell in love with the campus, the people, and the province. But I got involved as well. And when I was at Acadia, I got involved in the student newspaper, the Athenaeum. In my first year, just contributed a couple of articles. In my second, I was a photographer. In my third, news editor. And in my fourth, editor-in-chief. A hefty responsibility, but one that I took in stride as a custodian of Acadia's history. But it was in my role as editor-in-chief that I began learning the fascinating stories that made Acadia unique. For such a small school in the middle of nowhere, Nova Scotia, you wouldn't expect it to have such a rich, complicated, and connected past. But as I dug into the archives, I learned that there was a lot to unpack. Mass drownings, fires, American billionaires, religious bigotry, attempted coups d'etats, gunpoint resignations, backroom deals, the works. But there was one piece that I found especially fascinating. And this was the story of how 103 years ago, American billionaires nearly ruined higher education in Nova Scotia. And this begs the question, so what? This happened 100 years ago, who cares? Well, in the face of ongoing American aggression today, the rise of a billionaire class, and cuts to higher education around the world, learning from this history matters. So let me set the stage. Like today, there were nearly a dozen universities across Nova Scotia in 1922. Each was heavily religious, drawing the bulk of its enrollment from its respective religious denomination. Baptists to Acadia, Presbyterians to Dalhousie, Roman Catholics to St. FX, Methodists to Mount Allison, Anglicans to King's, and so on. Now, each had some level of control over the respective governing boards and contributed financially to ensure that they stayed open. Enter the Carnegie Corporation. Now, founded as the philanthropic arm of American steel billionaire Andrew Carnegie's wealth, it was charged with the promotion of advancement and knowledge across the world. If you've ever been on Acadia's campus before, you'll probably recognize this building. Now, granted, the picture's a little old, but this is Carnegie Hall, built with money from the corporation. Now, the corporation had been interested in the Maritimes since the early 1900s, which they called a, quote, pioneer and poverty-stricken part of the world. But the corporation saw an opportunity to utilize its immense wealth for good. Their main philanthropic competitor was the Rockefeller Foundation, and they had already contributed millions of dollars to both healthcare and education causes. Both gave millions with the belief that they had a moral obligation to use their wealth for good. But both saw the region as a lab for their philanthropic efforts, and cash-strapped universities were willing to bite. Lack of coherence, scattered resources, and repeated requests for funding pushed the Carnegie Corporation to consider another option. Instead of providing sporadic grants to each of these institutions, why not just provide one lump sum payment to unify all of them into a single institution? After all, proposals for amalgamation had been around since Joseph Howe in the 1830s, with the argument that it would save the province money and provide a better education. So, in 1921, the Carnegie Corporation sponsored a study to see if there was any appetite for this. The researchers, William Learned and Kenneth Stills, toured around Atlantic Canada and tabled their report a year later, with surprising results. Both saw potential for unification. Dal had great lab equipment, Acadia a fantastic library, and each university had high-quality professors who weren't being paid enough. Sound familiar? So to use their billions for good, the Learned Stills report of 1922 recommended the establishment of a single federated university right here in Halifax. Partnering institutions would become constituent colleges, giving up their right to award degrees. This would mean that Mount Allison, Acadia, St. FX, Dal, King's, and even the University of New Brunswick would all become constituent colleges of a single larger university. Now, these colleges would be dedicated only to the first 2 years of undergrad teaching, while all the remaining undergrad teaching, plus science and graduate education, would be done here in Halifax. Now, Dal would be the senior partner in this arrangement, and they would have to give up a lot. They would give up their entire campus to this new university, and a brand new board of governors would have to be chosen. Now, this plan wasn't entirely new. In fact, it was actually based off the founding of the University of Toronto, where a bunch of smaller institutions came together to form a big one, but where also some of the subjects were taught by the central university and the rest by the constituent colleges. But to sweeten the deal, the Carnegie Corporation was ready to offer each college a grant of up to $500,000. That's equivalent to $10 million today. $200,000 of which would be used to build a brand new college building on or near Dal's campus. Partnering institutions would get to hold on to their names and their endowments, except for Dal. Now, what would Dal get, you might be asking? Well, in exchange for giving up pretty much all of their resources, the proposed institution would hold on to the name, Dalhousie University, albeit with students attending Mount Allison College, King's College, St. Francis Xavier College, and so on. Now, this actually would have been a really big change. It would have meant that 6 separate institutions would have ceased to exist, as they were folded into the new umbrella institution of Dalhousie University. Think for a second about what this might mean. Today, we take huge pride in being grads of a specific university. If there are any St. FX grads in the audience today, you probably have an X ring. You can recognize another X alum anywhere in the world with that ring. Now, what this proposal would have done was erased those identities, absorbing them into a single monolithic entity devoid of that unique community. Now, at a conference later that year, delegations from all around the Maritimes, all of whom fit the stuffy white male stereotype, debated about what this proposed institution should look like. And after much arguing, they agreed to a plan. But it needed approval from each of the separate governing boards. Many quickly said yes because, surprise, surprise, they weren't rich and they needed the promised cash. But in the end, it all came down to Acadia. And after much debate and much arguing, Acadia's Board of Governors determined that joining the proposed confederation would be bad for Wolfville, bad for the Annapolis Valley, and bad for the Maritimes. In February 1923, Acadia's Board of Governors voted down the merger. Now, reaction was explosive. Newspapers crucified Acadia for their perceived selfishness. But momentum was gone, and the proposal was dead. Slowly but surely, institutions started pulling out, except for one, King's College. Now, King's technically got its start in Windsor in 1920, or rather, it burned down in 1920. It got its start much before that, but that's a story for another time. And King's was not rich. The Anglican denomination that ran it did not have a lot of money, and King's needed it very badly. So, with the help of the Carnegie Corporation, Dal and King's signed an agreement in 1923. And that's why today, the University of King's College sits on the northwest corner of Dal's campus. Now, I find this story so interesting because it shows the resilience that's rooted at the heart of the Blue Noser spirit. Instead of bowing to the will of American billionaires, we saw Nova Scotians say no. This is our home. We will be the ones to decide our future. Nova Scotians chose community, not billionaires. Now, this story is ultimately one of resilience. Universities outside of Halifax fought back, and the Carnegie Plan failed. But it left a lasting impact on our education system today. Today, Nova Scotia is home to a rich, thriving, diverse community of institutions, all of whom work together for the common good. Each has their own identity and their own contributions that they make to our province. But think for a second about what would have happened if this plan had succeeded. Small towns like Wolfville, Antigonish, Sackville wouldn't be the same. The inspiration and creativity that crests each September just simply wouldn't happen. Sure, Halifax would be a much bigger city, but our province would have lost something very special. The light would have gone out of our small towns, instead replaced by the orders of billionaires in New York. Now, Nova Scotia's already seen what happens during a brain drain, when generations of young people leave. Generations of people like me, who move from across the province or across the country to start fresh, come here and build something. They never would have arrived. I'm sure some of us have friends or relatives who moved out west in search of a better future. We know what happens when people don't see a reason to stay. We know what happens when they don't see a future here. And our mission is to give them that reason to stay. And investing in higher education is that answer. Now, in the face of ongoing aggression from the United States today, we can learn a lesson. Our uniqueness doesn't come from centralization. In fact, it comes from the diversity of our institutions and their people working together for the common good. Now, today we're seeing attacks on higher education across the world. Rising anti-intellectualism, tighter budgets, and skepticism about the value of an education are questioning beliefs in universities. Tuition dollars are going up, services are going down, and folks are asking, is it worth it? I say, hell yes. The demands of the 21st century are going to require us to constantly adapt to change. And higher education is valuable because it teaches us how to think, not what to think. At the end of the day, governments are going to come and go, social programs are going to start and stop, but these institutions last centuries. They've nurtured generations of leaders, thinkers, and doers, and that's why they matter to me. But today they're under threat. And as a Haligonian, as a Nova Scotian, and as a Canadian, I feel that deep sense of responsibility to show up. It's up to all of us now, right now, to show up. In my spare time, I give tours at the Halifax Public Gardens, and I always end my tours by saying that history belongs to those who show up. Democracy belongs to those who show up. It's up to all of us now to learn from our history and show up. Thank you.